Right, Adam, we're live. Hello, everybody. Here with Adam Klasfeld, who launched his Substack on the same day I launched mine. I think we actually have some interesting overlap in what we're looking to cover. People who noticed the new decor, no, I didn't change my apartment. I'm at a hotel in Newton, Massachusetts, up here for a wedding. So if you have any Newton, Mass recs, send them my way. Adam, good to be with you. I don't, I've followed your work, but we don't know each other. So start by telling us about this project. It's got a very interesting twist on a traditional news publication.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Yeah, the name of our publication is All Rise News, which has a quadruple entendre that I'll spell out in a bit. But it's a partnership with me and Tim Mack, and he is a war correspondent based in Ukraine, who's been covering of the Russian invasion there for a long time. And we've had some conversations about what journalism must do in the Trump era. And like you, Ryan, we see clear-eyed the sort of democratic threat, the threat to our rule of law. It's the reason why there are 800 some odd May Day events around the world, and there are more than 40 events where lawyers are standing up in front of courthouses renewing their oaths. So what we're trying to do is to combat that feeling of helplessness that so many people watching the news come away with by always focusing on opportunities for civic engagement. I'll give you
Yeah,
an
yeah,
example.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So go for it.
Yeah. Well, I've been covering the courts for nearly 2 decades, and very often people ask me, what does this matter, this ruling matter? It's just going to get overturned. But my point of view is there's so much actionable information coming out of the courts that you can take to your representatives, ask them
Hmm.
about this verified information, and people are doing that. We've broken a bunch of stories about statistics of people calling their reps. That's usually very difficult to quantify. As you know, there's not a central repository for this information, but we approached a San Francisco based app called Five Calls. We've looked into their data set, and it reveals what's firing people up, who they're
Huh,
calling, what their response
interesting.
is. Yeah, I mean, that's just an
So
example.
back up on when you talk about the actionable information in these legal cases. As reporters, we know that in the filings that go back and forth in a legal case, there's all sorts of interesting details. One of the reasons it's so fun to cover the courts, and as a reporter, you get much deeper insights, and a lot of the stuff we've learned about, for instance, Doge and some of the immigration cases or the deportation cases come from government lawyers having to go in and answer questions that the judge posed or the other side posed. What do you mean by the actionable intelligence? Is that what you're talking about? That kind of information, or something else that people out there, if they want to actually move beyond the headlines and do something, just connect that for me.
So, in a broad sense, all information is actionable if it's true and it's verified. But let me give you a very concrete example. We ran a story recently about the notice and comment period on Schedule F. The notice and comment period gives the public, when the Trump administration posts on the Federal Register that they are going to implement a rule change that might mean the sudden purging of 50,000 civil servants and replacing them with political appointees. They are giving the public notice where they have roughly, they have a certain period of time to contact and the Federal Register and leave a comment that the government has to respond to. And if that rule becomes final, and they did not adequately respond to the public's concerns, that can really turn out negatively against them if that goes to litigation. As you know, there have been a ton of Administrative Procedure Act cases. So that's an example of a very high impact activity that a lot of the general public isn't aware of, that they could go to the Federal Register's website now and stop a government purge from happening, or at least be able to fight back against that purge. You mentioned Doge. That's the way that you can do it outside of our system of checks and balances that Trump and Elon Musk are trying to do outside of our constitutional order. Now, the kind of shock and awe campaign is fading now that Elon Musk is feeling the consequences with Tesla. And there's this kind of sly effort to replace it with the formal announcement of a rule in dry legalese, hoping the public does not notice it. And we want to call attention to those little details, those opportunities at every opportunity to help people locate their own power.
I love this, and because first of all, I love those kinds of stories that derive from the Federal Register or court cases. And how does it? This is very new. Well, so many questions. All right, one. Are there other models, Adam, that you looked to when you were thinking about how could you do something that's not just reporting the news, but empowering people to take action, which is your mission here? Are there other, historically, other publications that have done this, that inspired you? Is there any other models out there?
You know, I would say that there are other news outlets that have noticed what the public can, they'll pay attention to a protest, or maybe a protest will be covered on page A27. When Tim and I were having these conversations in anticipation of our launch, we really felt that no one was doing it quite like this. But I will say there have been, if you've been watching Rachel Maddow recently, she's been very good about highlighting protests around the country. There
Yeah,
have been, if you look at the Contrarian, they're constantly
yeah,
covering the Democratic response. We're taking this approach slightly differently from the standpoint of investigation. I'll go back to the data stories that I've been focusing on. It, I so far as I'm aware, I haven't seen stories that have tried to quantify what people are doing to call their representatives. What are they talking about? What responses have they had? Have they reached a voicemail or a live human being?
yeah,
And this is a kind of very traditional journalistic approach, which is context that we believe our readers are crying out for. It's an actual, that it's not, they're not just wanting to know what happened in a court case today, what
yeah.
happened in this judge's ruling. They want to know, what is the significance of this information in my life? And if they're alarmed by what they're seeing, how can they affect change?
And so with this model, it raises so many interesting questions. Just as someone that's been inside magazines and newsrooms, and sort of, you know, um, it's more difficult what you're doing, right? Just reporting the news is hard enough, and there's a sense among a lot of us in the business that you report it, you put it out there, and then you move on to the next thing.
Right.
When you're thinking of a story, um, how much time do you think how much do you spend on that next step, and how have you integrated that? I know it's very early, it's only been 2 weeks. How have you sort of integrated that into the sort of workflow of a story that gets assigned and published? But then there's this third thing, right? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we try to incorporate it in every story. It's an ethos, and it's really trying to reposition how I even conceive of journalism. Something of my background. I cut my teeth at a legal newswire, AP style. You always get comment from all the parties, and you don't insert opinion, and
Yeah,
you don't, and you just tell the story quickly and you move on. As we were conceiving of this different approach, how the key question emerged: how do I take all the experiences and the ethos that have carried me throughout my career? And how do we present that to this new style that's focused on the rights and powers of the reader? And I'll give you another example. A classic story that I would have always covered: the arrest of a judge in Wisconsin. What happened right after the Trump administration arrested this judge in I would say, an act that would have been called unprecedented, except the Trump administration did just that in its first term with a judge in Massachusetts. Usually, it's not to say that judges are never arrested, never for this reason, never
Yeah.
for the reasons that they're alleging. So, how does this become an all rise news story? Well, we have to pay attention to the fact that hundreds of people went right to the courthouse in Milwaukee when right after the arrest, to protest this, and informing readers what that act does. By doing that, the Washington Post and numerous other news organizations had to make public outrage part of the story. So, how
Hmm.
to carry that forward? Describing the practice of court watching. We're right now researching how court watching organizations across the country have recruited
Court
people.
court watching. Explain that. What is court watching?
Court watching is what it sounds like. It's having people uh, go to the courts to observe legal proceedings. And it's often done in cases that neither of us usually write about, right? It happens with very powerless people who are at a bail proceeding, and
Right.
they're on guard for some procedural irregularities that are violating the rights of people who are disempowered. But court watching more broadly is just watching court proceedings. It could be a high profile case. I'll give you, one thing that I always talk about is I covered every single day of Trump's criminal prosecution trial in New York, and I was covering it every night on MSNBC's Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. And one of the things that I always tell people about covering that case and watching the moment Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felonies is that anyone could have done that. It's not that I had special journalistic credentials, and I did, but but there were also people who had no journalistic credentials, who were not lawyers in the case, who woke up early and attended the trial, or in that case, stayed overnight to see that very moment. So these are I'm able to do this not because I'm a journalist, but I'm able to do this because I live in a society that has open access to the courts. And that comes from a long tradition. I want to, I feel that I'm lucky that to professionally witness history. And I want to remind people, because I feel like so many people aren't even aware that they have a right to attend any single proceeding that will have a real effect on their lives. And, the folks who are watching now, nearly 200 people watching now, think about a court case in the area where you live. Uh, you have the right to attend any of these proceedings. And I would say that it is well worthwhile. It very often, I find it very interesting, but I also think, it's important. People like us who are writing about these proceedings will notice if the courtroom is empty or it's full. And that will be a
Yeah.
sign to the media more broadly that these cases are being watched. So it has impact. And I also think it's very interesting, and you'll be much more informed by watching the courts about how they operate.
A lot of people and a lot of our viewers, Adam, remember you from your coverage of the New York case. You became really well known during that case, and I personally I was not up in New York covering that, but I relied on your threads and your all of your content during that. Was that a unique experience in terms of covering something that the whole world was watching, where you sort of suddenly became one of the star chroniclers of it, or that seemed to be your sort of breakout moment, and I know a lot of people in the chat here are pointing that out. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, thank you. I would say that was. I am very grateful to Lawrence O'Donnell, a man I very much admire. He actually gave me my first opportunity to go on cable TV when the Mueller report just came out. So this was a while back. This was well before
Well,
Trump.
you got a 10 out of 10 room raider background there, my friend.
Oh, thank you, thank you. That was, I should actually print out the Room Raider tweets I've got now. But I will say that particular appearance, it happened. I had noticed a footnote of the Mueller report that had gone unnoticed until that point, where Mueller had said something to the effect of that if Trump were impeached and removed from office, then you could criminally prosecute him. And this was right when the Trump administration was going around saying this is total and complete exoneration. Well, that's something that was markedly different from that. So after I pointed out that in a tweet, I heard from to my surprise and excitement from the Last Word team. So that was how I started working with them. So it wasn't my first time. I wouldn't. I would say it was the first time. And again, such gratitude to all of them for bringing me on. That I was on his show every day at the round table saying what happened in the court, and it's a highlight of my career. Um, but I think the first time that I was ever on that air was after the Mueller report.
You did a great job. Your partner, Tim Mack, who had his own unique project doing war reporting in Ukraine called the Counter Offensive. If our viewers don't subscribe, you should definitely check out. Excuse me, I can't talk right now. Should definitely check out the Counter Offensive, as well as All Rise News, Adam and Tim's new project. Any lessons learned from Tim's experience in Ukraine? He just sort of set up shop and did it. It was such a cool project, and such great reporting came out of there. But there was they had a point of view, obviously,
Right?
in their coverage. Did you any lessons learned in that?
I was inspired by his bravery. I remember when he told me what he was doing. And it's one thing, I'm sure both of us understand how what a big step it is to go into independent media. Those of us who have spent our entire career outside of independent media, it takes no small leap of faith. But he did that in a war zone. And
Yeah,
he did that, I think that he's been quite open about this. The fact that uh, NPR was doing cuts that affected his crew. And he
yeah.
did, once his crew was affected, it was the ultimate we'll do it live moment. So I've learned from his example, the bravery of that act, the integrity of that act. But also I've learned from the wealth of experience that he's had ever since that time in this great forum that with Substack, it allows us to have this conversation. I had after there was breaking news
Yeah.
today, I was right outside the courtroom and holding the phone in my hand to talk to Harry Littman. Um, and that these live streams can happen, these connections can happen, and he taught me how to navigate that. As a matter of fact, funny story. When we were planning our opening post, he told me I was missing something very important: a subscribe button. And someone who's been on Substack
Yeah,
for for a very long time knows that's a very important thing. We are building an audience.
yeah.
We want to get the word out. So that's an example of just the insights. How does this work? What is cross recommending? But also on a deeper level, what can we do that's different? Now that was the big conversation. That what are we going to do in our approach that
Yes.
journalism is lacking at this moment, or at least we're not seeing it. We're not seeing folks doing it quite like this. And once we turn our investigative focus on opportunities for civic engagement from a traditional journalistic framework, uh, we thought we hit something big.
Tell me what are the top, you're very focused on legal issues. Um, there's no shortage of them to cover. I myself try and stay organized with a, crazy database of all of the different ones that, I know that, to tell us news readers will wanna know about. Give us, like, your top, 3 or 5, cases or issues that you're gonna stay laser focused on in the days and weeks ahead. And obviously, there'll be new ones added to that list, as we all know, but what are the ones you think are the most important, and why?
So just today, I covered a ruling in the Alien Enemies Act case. It's very important because it's the entire legal framework that this administration has used to justify sending hundreds of immigrants to El Salvador without any process whatsoever. And today, a federal judge appointed by Donald Trump found that that entire proclamation was, in his words, unlawful. There are going to be two other rulings coming up, probably falling in the same way, if history is any judge, in the Southern District of New York and also in Colorado. So we're going to be on the lookout for those rulings and what happens as this goes back up almost inevitably to the Supreme Court. So we're going to be covering that. We're going to be following what happens in the Abrego Garcia case. We're going to be following, I mentioned the Federal Register. We're going to keep an eye on that because for us, those are high impact opportunities for people. The notice and comment period, it's obscure to many people. They don't realize that they can affect the future course of litigation by leaving a formal comment, even anonymously, on the issues that they care about. And in terms of legal cases, we're going to explore everything high profile that affects people's rights. And there are, as you know, hundreds of cases against the Trump administration that unfold every week with DOJ, the allocation of budget. We're going to be following what's happening with Judge Dugan in Wisconsin. So we're going to be pretty busy.
It's good. It's great. It's a great site. And anyone who's watching this, I hope you subscribe. Adam, thank
And
you for doing this. We launched on the same day, and I thought it was really cool that we have a lot in common in terms of what we find lacking right now in the mainstream media. And I hope we haven't talked about this offline yet. So I hope you and I can have some other chances to collaborate, not just on these lives, but on some reporting too. So I'll talk to you about that separately. But I love what you guys are doing.
thank you so much. And I want to say exactly the same, Ryan. You really hit on the emergency nature of this moment, and you're unflinching. You're fearless at this,
Yeah.
and so the respect for everything you're doing, it's completely mutual. And I look
Oh,
forward to chatting more offline.
I appreciate that. I gotta give a shout out to my sister who I saw, came on. I know she'll appreciate that. Um, and thank you guys so much. Please make sure you check out Adam's project and subscribe it, and please, subscribe to Tell Us News as well. Thanks, and I'll talk to you soon, Adam.
Talk to you soon.